We're going Canucks heavy in today's show because for the first time in weeks, I feel like we actually have some substantial things to talk about. No, we're not talking about the playoff race. We're not talking about Tom Willander potentially signing, potentially not. We're not talking about guys leaving. We're talking about the future. Because we have ourselves a bunch of notes that we can go out there and dive into in regards to the Vancouver Canucks and what their situation is, starting out with Rick Dhaliwal, who made an appearance on Halford and Brough earlier this morning, heading into tomorrow's Canucks game against the Minnesota Wild. Now, of course, we know that the Vancouver Canucks are already eliminated from the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs, so whatever happens against Minnesota doesn't really matter if you're looking at the bigger picture here. However, that should not be totally taken to heart here because there still is some reasonable identity that the Canucks can try to form for themselves heading into the final few games of the year. There are younger guys trying to earn a spot not just for the remainder of this season, but for the majority of next season. There are pending UFAs that will be given their final time to show off what they can bring to any team that signs them in free agency, whether it is Vancouver or otherwise. And we're going to be heading over to Canucks News Summaries post on Twitter because they summarized the Rick Dhaliwal radio hit from earlier this morning. Let's dive into this here. He goes out there and talks about, he as in Dhaliwal, Elias Pettersson. He's the number one thing that Vancouver needs to get fixed. He has to get stronger. He has to get in shape. The Canucks want him to stay in Vancouver too, but you can't force a player to stay in town. Most players go home after the season to reset. They don't trust him to go home and train properly. Now that is a really, really interesting update here. How the Vancouver Canucks have already put pressure on Elias Pettersson to stay in Vancouver. Train here. Be here. We can monitor what you're doing. Don't yeet off to Bali like Andrei Kuzmenko did and have an improper summer's worth of training. It's interesting because Pettersson, for the most part, has had success training in Sweden and coming back and having a 100-point season 2 seasons ago. Last season, he was amazing to start out the 23-24 campaign. Number 1 in the league in points, tied with Miller and Hughes. But this season, this was a really bad season for Elias Pettersson's standards, and between the injuries and between him not being conditioned, heading into the season, it is very understandable why Vancouver's try to tell him, hey, stay here, don't go back home. Of course, they can't pressure him to do that, they can't force him to do that, but I do wonder, if Elias Pettersson goes back to Sweden this summer, what is the GM and the management's perspective on that? How do they feel about Pettersson leaving Vancouver even though they want him to stay? Let's continue. On Brock Boeser, Dhaliwal says that Boeser is a popular player in the dressing room and with the coaching staff. He wants to stay in Vancouver too. Dhaliwal expects the Canucks to take another run at re-signing him in the next few weeks. And term is the issue. Boeser wants 7 or 8 years. The Canucks have offered 5 years at $8 million a season. That's not new. We know that Vancouver has been in a spot where they were not afraid to go to $8 million a year for Brock. It's just 5 years is the max they would be willing to do and negotiate with. Boeser wants to be here long term. And the question is, okay, if Boeser is already kind of slow now, he's not really a play driver now, is $8 million an appropriate dollar amount? And how is he going to play 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now? Is that contract going to be seen as more of an anchor, a Louis Eriksson-esque deal by the time Boeser is 8 years into the future? Who knows? Boeser, I think, is a talented goal scorer, but he just doesn't fit the stylistic identity that Vancouver wants for itself. His skill and what it is that he does well, it just doesn't translate to what this Canucks team is trying to be. And ultimately, if that is the biggest factor as to why Vancouver is not willing to meet his contract demands, they're not willing to go 7 or 8 years, then I guess that's just all there is to it. He's going to leave and Vancouver's going to get nothing for him after they had an opportunity to trade him at the trade deadline, and they didn't. Quinn Hughes' influence, Vancouver Canucks News Summaries writes out about here. Rick Dhaliwal says that Hughes wields a huge voice right now. He has publicly expressed support for both Pettersson and Rick Tocchet. He just wants to win. He's got a high care meter. And everything the Canucks do should be with Quinn Hughes in mind. Of course, Captain Quinn is the main guy. If anything, he is the player that Vancouver believes in and entrusts their entire franchise to. They want him to stay in Vancouver forever. This is what Rick Dhaliwal said about Rick Tocchet. The Canucks made an offer, but they were rejected. He wonders if the dollar value wasn't high enough. And he also wouldn't be surprised if Tocchet was coaching at the World Hockey Championships. So Vancouver potentially getting into uncharted territory in terms of giving coaches money with these Rick Tocchet negotiations in the next little while. There also are some conversations on the World Hockey Championships. Demko and Hughes are not going to be going. He has heard that Team Sweden has interest in Willander. It doesn't look like it's going to happen due to the Frozen Four, though, and potentially signing with the Vancouver Canucks, as well as his college workload. On Tom Willander, he will either sign with the Canucks tomorrow or go to the AHL after the Frozen Four, or he will go back to school. He was told that going back to school is an option, but signing with the Canucks tomorrow is a huge option as well. So, Tom Willander could be heading over to Vancouver soon, within the next little while here. We got to keep our eyes and noses peeled out for that. This is what Dhaliwal said about Pius Suter. Haven't had serious talks with his agent. The Canucks will have to go to an uncomfortable number. Teams are watching Suter to see how he handles the pressure of being a number one center. Tocchet loves this guy, and time will tell if he can get $4 million as a UFA. Then there also is a conversation about Derek Forbort. The Canucks like him, and they think, or Dhaliwal thinks, the Canucks have talked to his agent. Yeah, pronouns. It's hard to identify whom it is these sentences are referring to. The Canucks like Forbort, and Dhaliwal thinks the Canucks have talked to Forbort's agent. There you go. Dhaliwal wouldn't be shocked if the Canucks try to re-sign Forbort, and the only problem is the presence that Forbort has is forcing Elias Pettersson to the right side, so that is also an extra tidbit of info too. Big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries for always providing us with the scoops and what is said on these radio shows. It is very helpful and very, very great. This is a conversation I wanted to have about Pius Suter too. Would you sign Pius Suter at $5 million for 4 or 5 years, something like that? Honestly, I don't know, man. If you can guarantee that he's going to be as good as he was this season, every season, then okay, that's fine. But as Sapp goes out there and says, this is the Kuzmenko and Joshua trap all over again. Let's see if management bites again, or if they stick with their in-house replacement in Ratu. Buyer beware, Noah Strang said. Before the season, Pius Suter had never scored more than 15 goals in a year. This year, his shooting percentage spikes sharply, and he's at 24 goals. If he was shooting at his career average of 13.2, which is already good, he would have had 16 goals this year. I'm a Pius Suter fan, but this isn't trying to discredit how good he has been. If you pay him, though, to be a 20-plus goal scorer, you're hoping for a repeat in terms of shooting percentage, which is unlikely. Suter or Ratu? That's a conversation we can have in the comments section. Finally, to end things off, I wanted to dive into one more thing. This is IMAX article from yesterday, the article with the Brock Boeser unlikely comments. It was updated earlier this morning, which is why the timestamp reached April 11th. I wanted to talk about some Patrik Allvin comments on Pettersson, because it's written about here in the article, but the Canucks were unhappy with Pettersson's conditioning from last summer. This goes hand in hand with what Dhaliwal said about how the Canucks want Petey to stay in Vancouver. The $92.8 million player struggled through most of the season before leaving the lineup on March 22nd. He has 15 goals and 45 points in 64 games in the first season of an 8-year deal that is by far the largest in franchise history. Allvin said that Pettersson's summer training program will be a key part of exit meeting discussions and indicated it might be best for the Swede to stay in Vancouver to train this offseason. That's something we're obviously going to talk about here when the season is over and have a plan for it, Allvin said. We have the right resources here to help him. Listen, he has the ability to dictate the future, and I'm sure he wants to come back to his normal form and wants to continue to grow and get better. So we absolutely have the commitment and resources here to help him do that. So, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about all these Vancouver Canucks related things. World Championships, Willander, Pettersson, Boeser, Hughes, Tocchet, Pius Suter overpaying, and then of course the Elias Pettersson training in the summer thing. What are your opinions about everything Vancouver Canucks related? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.